Welcome to YOUCANIC. Today here on YOUCANIC we have a 2019 Nissan Rogue, and on this Nissan Rogue we're going to go over how you'd replace the Serpentine belt and the tensioner. The tensioner portion is a little trickier than the Serpentine belt. If you're just doing a Serpentine belt, it's very easy and straightforward, but when you get to the tensioner portion, it's a good thing to an easier way to remove it with not having to take a ton of stuff off is there's these 3 motor mount bolts that you can loosen and remove, and then that way you can raise the engine up, and that way you get an access point to the bolt there, and I'll show that the best I can. But we have our Serpentine belt that runs down around the alternator. You'd want to make sure that you take a picture and or draw out a drawing so you remember how it goes back on when you put it on. So this is the crank pulley, then you've got the AC, then the water pump, and the alternator, and this is the tensioner one. So it's rib side around the crank, rib side around the AC compressor, smooth side around the back of the water pump, rib side around the alternator, and smooth side on the tensioner. So to start with, we're going to remove the tensioner, or not remove the tensioner, we're going to release the tension on the belt, remove this old belt, and then I will show you how you can remove the tensioner itself to be able to replace it. If you're just replacing the belt, you can just skip to where you just loosen the belt and remove it. But we'll go through the process of removing this tensioner to begin with, and how you would put that back on. So to start with, you would go through and remove, and this is the 2.0 motor, but you would loosen and remove these 3 bolts on the motor mount. There's also, if you wanted to take the whole motor mount off, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more bolts up here that hold this top motor mount on, but we only need to really remove these 3 here. There's a size 16. And if you remove these 3, then you can put a jack either up here and pull on the motor mount up, or I have a jack under to jack it up. And you only need to jack it up about 1 inch. You can measure it here. I also made marks so that when we put the motor mount back in, you can line it all back up to where it was previously, and so that it's not too far off of where it was. So once that's been removed, then you can jack up the engine about 1 inch on this side so that you have an access to remove the bolt that holds the tensioner in. So next, I have the front tire has been removed on the right hand side of the vehicle, the passenger side. You also need to remove this cover plate here, which is just held on by a bunch of push pins. So you can remove that to gain access to see this. And you'll see right up here is the tensioner. And we can get a wrench on there to be able to back the tension off so we can get the belt off. So it's a size 14 to be able to remove the tension. And now with the tension removed, we'll be able to remove the belt. Alright, so we've removed the whole belt. Now we're going to go over, this is the tensioner, and how you can remove that tension. To start with, we're going to want to jack up the engine. We've got a block and a jack under the engine, and we're going to raise it up. So we'll want to raise the engine up to be able to get access to remove that tensioner that's sitting up in there. And what we want is we've got to raise it up so that we can get a socket in right here through this hole. And so if you just pull this panel back a little bit, You can get a socket right in there, but we do need to raise it up because it's not lined up. There's a hole through the frame there. It allows us access. So I'm going to raise up the engine and then get that lined up to be able to undo the bolt. So with the engine raised up, we have access to the bolt head here to be able to remove that. And that is a T45. And you just kind of so you're able to pull the bolt out through there, and now we can work the tensioner out. And this is our tensioner that has been removed to be replaced. Alright, so when you take your new tensioner, you'll note that this little pin here, that's got to line up on there, so because that's what's going to hold it so that the tension will set. So we got to fill our way up in there and get that up there, and then be able to get this bolt to lead back through that access port right there. I know this isn't the most visually pleasing. Okay, so I'm going to try to feed the tensioner up through the bottom here, and that little pin is on the bottom. So if our tensioner is up like this, we should be right where we need to be. We'll just feed it through. Alright, so we got the tensioner back up into place. It takes a little bit of finagling to be able to get it where it needs to go. And once you get it there, then you start the screw, start the bolt, and tighten it, good and hand tight. But then you're also making sure that that little tab that was on the back of the tensioner is in the right position in the hole there, so that when you go to put the tension will be able to set where it needs to go. And now you're going to want to tighten that bolt. And with that all tightened up, then the next thing would be that you lower the engine, line your marks back up for the motor mount, and then tighten those, and then you can proceed to put the belt back on. Thanks for watching YOUCANIC, where you can be the mechanic.